Hey guys, and welcome to Graphic Designer Pro, and welcome to another live tutorial on the channel. So I hope you are all having a good day so far. If you didn't already know, we are going to be taking a look at the Nike logo today in this tutorial. We're going to be taking a quick look at the history of it, how it came to be, and how it's become such an iconic logo even today. So before we do that, there's a few things I'll jump into first. Just if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please be sure to do that. Like this video if you enjoy it as well. We've got tons of content already on the channel and tons more to come as well. We cover things like logo design, how to use the likes of Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, and even After Effects. So if you're interested in any of that kind of content, definitely check out the channel and subscribe. Now, before we also get started, I also just want to mention that we are currently running a free logo design workshop. So if you are interested in logo design or want to improve on your logo designs, this is perfect for you. We basically cover our entire logo design process. We go into a lot of detail on what we do. It's a completely tried and tested process as well. This is one we've been using for years and still use to this day with huge success, including for six-figure clients. So hopefully there's a lot of really good information in there for you as well. I will put a link to that in the chat now. I believe there's also a link in the description, but I'll paste that into the chat if anyone's interested. Just give me 1 second. So let's copy that. Okay. So that's in the chat now, so be sure to check that out. Obviously you can check that out at the end of the video as well if you'd like to. But like I say, today we are going to be focusing on the Nike logo. So it's obviously one of the most iconic logos in the world, arguably ever. It's such a strong mark, that Nike swoosh or Nike swoosh. I'm not going to judge if you pronounce it differently. Maybe I pronounce it wrong, but that's one of those debates for another time. But yeah, it stood the test of time, as we're going to go on to look at just now. It was actually originally designed in 1971, so absolutely incredible that a logo that was designed over 50 years ago now is still very much a leading logo, you could say. It's really not changed much over the years as well, as we'll see. There's only been the biggest changes have really been to the Nike text that accompany the logo mark. So that's one thing to note. We're really focusing on the logo mark in this video, not so much the text and the branding that surrounds it as well, because obviously that has evolved hugely over the years. But what I'm going to do is we'll take a look at an article here. So I'll post this article in the chat as well. So if anyone wants to, go for a bit of a deeper dive into the history behind it, they can have a look through this. This is a pretty comprehensive article. So it's got, loads of information on it. So that is also in the chat. Just going to say hello to Ali, who's watching. Good to see you joining us live, Ali. Any questions as well as we go through this, guys, please just let me know as well. I'm happy to do my best to answer them. So yeah, the Nike logo was originally created in 1971 by graphic designer Carolyn Davidson. Now, at the time, she didn't have a huge amount of experience. I don't believe. She was a student, and it was actually a professor at the university she was at that approached her. And initially, she was actually doing, I believe it was infographics and things and presentations for the company before even having a shot at doing the logo. So that's, I always like that about how this logo came to be. She was not some big agency. It was very humble beginnings. And for any budding designers out there, it's an important one to remember that a company of Nike's size now started with fairly inexperienced people at the helm. And as you can see, the title of this article here is the $35 swoosh, and that's because the Nike swoosh only cost them $35 initially. I believe she has been given shares and things now, so I think she has been compensated in some ways given the size of the company now. But amazing that it started from this. yeah, so she'd initially been doing other types of graphic design for Phil Knight, who was the one of the founders of Nike. Here you can see some of her initial sketches as well, and I believe I have another image up here. So there's some more of them there, so you can see kind of how it came to be. The one in the middle here is much more kind of abstract to the version we're used to, but you can see the versions above, and if I just take a look here, this is the actual evolution of the Nike logo. These are all the major updates to it through the years. You can see the actual shape of the mark really hasn't changed much at all, which is so impressive, especially when you consider no computers were used to create it. So really impressive. You'll notice as well, 1964 is technically when the company was founded, but at that point it was known as Blue Ribbon Sports, and it then later changed to Nike or Nike, who is a Greek god as well. That's the name of a Greek god, which is in this article they state that is part of the imagery in here. Now this is very much an abstract mark. It's not necessarily representing any one thing. The main thing that Phil Knight wanted to get across with the logo was movement. Obviously, them being a sports brand, a sports company, so that's really the focus of this logo is to try and get that feeling of movement across. I've heard people saying it also represents, a runner's leg in the starting block. There's lots of theories about what it represents. Yeah, as you can see here, so Nike, the goddess of victory. So a lot of people think that it's also representative of one of the wings of Nike, the goddess. So I think I've seen other articles countering that, saying that's not the case, but I think it's one of those that's maybe slightly open to interpretation. I don't think there's been any word on exactly what it is, but movement is the main one. And funnily as well, Phil Knight, when he was presented the original Nike swoosh, he didn't really like it that much. I think he said something like, "I don't love it, but I hope it will grow on me," or something to that effect, which is funny given how iconic it is nowadays and how universally loved it is. So yeah, going back to the kind of evolution, you can see started as Blue Ribbon Sports, and then in 1971, I believe that's when Nike, the company, was changed to Nike, and then 1972, I'm assuming, was when the logo was actually carried out into their marketing, and you can see how it's evolved from there. Really, not much change at all in the mark itself. Some slight differences incorporating the Nike text here, inverting it into and putting it into a box holding shape in 1985, and now a lot of the time you'll see that it is just that logo mark used by itself. But I mean, even if you just take a look at their product range, their shoes are a perfect example. The Nike swoosh is actually changes all the time just within the brand. There's so many different versions of it depending on the product. So you've got the kind of classic Air Max Nike tick, which has a much longer sort of stem on it, a longer, thicker stem that wraps around the shoe. If you look at these products in the middle here, you can kind of get a better idea of just how much it changes from shoe to shoe as well. So that's kind of the beauty of it as well. Obviously we all know the core Nike swoosh tick, but it's actually been adapted so much over the years as well. You've got all their different ranges as well, like Nike Air, Nike SB. So there's it's such a big brand now that they've had to expand their product ranges and their branding, but it all still centers around this swoosh, which is really cool. So yeah, that'll kind of do it for a very brief history, and I know it is very brief, but like I say, check out that article if you want to look into it a little bit more. And now we are going to jump on to Illustrator. So we're actually going to have a go at recreating this in Illustrator, and I've already linked in the chat. It's also in the description. If you want to download this same template file we're working from, you can do, and have a go yourself. So what I'm going to do here, and we're going to try and do a few more of these kind of logo case studies, live tutorials. I'm going to try and recreate it freehand without the use of the image to trace or even reference. What I'm going to do is just turn off our Nike logo template layer in Illustrator. So I'm just going to try and do this freehand, and this is quite a fun exercise actually. If you're ever trying to recreate a logo, try and do it without any kind of reference first, just to see how well you can do it. It can be a good idea when you're designing your own logos as well. It's something we definitely subscribe to. If you can recreate it quickly, it's easier when you're doing it on a bit of paper, for example. If it's easy to remember and recreate, then you're normally onto a pretty strong logo. So, but in this case, I'm going to try and recreate it as accurately as I can. It's a lot more difficult than it seems, though, just to warn you. So I'm just going to grab my pen tool, go up to my design layer. I also have a guides layer here, and we will get to that when we trace it more perfectly with the reference image. It's obviously going to be a lot easier with that. So I'm just going to start by clicking once, and again, even things like the angles are actually quite tricky to get right. So I'm just going to click and drag. And what I really want is to click and drag my Bezier handles out here at the same angle as the line, and that's sometimes a bit tricky to do. That's where some guides can be very useful, as we'll show you. So let's just go with something like that for now. And already I can tell this is not going to be particularly good. Let's take that Bezier handle back a bit. So I think my line is already curving probably too much for what I'm after here. Let's go down to the bottom, click and drag to the left. And remember, you always want to create paths, if you're using something like the pen tool, in the direction you're going. I'm just going to make sure I don't have any fill set on there. That's fine. Okay, let's go up here. Again, this is just pure guesswork at this point. Let's maybe move this up a touch. Trying to get the flow of the paths as well is so difficult when you don't have some kind of reference image to go off, and that's where, again, when we're creating logos, we'll often create sketches. We always create sketches first. It's a really important part of the process because it can really help when it comes to actually creating accurate designs and tidying them up in Illustrator. So let's go with something like that. Again, try to remember how acute the angle is at the top there. We'll go with something like that. I think this is already going to be a train wreck. I can guarantee it here, folks. But and again, try to link this back up to the start. I may have to just close that, go back to my direct selection tool, and let's just adjust this slightly, see if we can get it a little bit better. But I think already it's too wide and maybe not quite tall enough. This point at the top maybe needs to come back a bit more. I'm pretty certain the points at the top, though, do align, so one's not higher than the other. So this is looking pretty horrible, but let's just go with this for now. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it there. I can keep butchering this, but I don't think it's really going to get any better. So this is an absolutely horrific attempt at the Nike logo, and yeah, hopefully we can do better tracing it. So let's turn our trace layer back on, and as you can see, let's just place this one over. It's absolutely so far off. I think even if I was to reposition this, let's sort of just skew it to try and fit. Yeah, it's wildly off the actual logo. If I swap that to an outline, you can see that. So that's where reference images are always useful. I know it's a case of, oh well, tracing it is easy, but obviously, a lot of great designs are the product of refining sketches or more freehand drawings that you can then go and refine and tidy up in the likes of Illustrator. So obviously this logo was initially a sketch. That's where it came to be in the first place. So always never underestimate the power of sketching first. So what I'm going to do is go back down to my guides layer. We've obviously got our Nike image, so this is the official Nike swoosh tick. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is create some guides to work with here. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool first, and one thing I would always recommend when you're using guides, or actually just tracing anything in general, is to bump your stroke weight right down. This just means you can be a lot more accurate. So if you had this quite thick, for example, I'm just going to click and drag over this with the rectangle. The strokes themselves tend to kind of cover up the trace line that you're going for. So it's actually quite difficult to be that precise with it. Whereas if you were to bump this down to even 0.25, I know this is really thin. You might even barely be able to see that on your computer screens, but it just means that you can be a lot more precise with it. You can see that this isn't actually touching the edges of this logo. So all I'm doing here is just dragging out this rectangle to basically touch each edge of the logo. So we've got it going along the left edge, the bottom there. Let's bring the top down to meet that top point and go back across. So actually, I was saying that the points of the Nike swoosh are equal. They're actually ever so slightly off. I think for the benefit of doubt in this case, I'm probably just going to match them up. But if we were to go off this image, the top corner point of the Nike swoosh isn't actually going to the very top corner of this rectangle. But like I say, it's very minor. So what I like to do from this point is I'll just grab my line segment tool, and this is where I can just start creating some projecting lines. I don't have to worry about really where they're going, and this is just to get the angles of this initial section correct. So again, just clicking and dragging them out. Go back up to the top corner. Let's drag the top section of that, and then I can be confident that they are, perfectly straight lines, and they are as close to the angle that this is going at as possible. So that's what we want. Let's grab my line segment tool once again. I'm also just going to do the same here. Now, obviously, this part of the logo is curving, but I'm sort of trying to think ahead and think about when I'm plotting the anchor points. I'm obviously going to be dragging out Bezier curves with my pen tool. I'm going to be using the pen tool for this, by the way. And that's one thing to know, actually, just quickly, just going on a bit of a tangent, but I have seen a few breakdowns of this logo where people try to use circles, and there is something to be said about using circles in logo design. We see a lot of these golden ratio circle logos, and they can work, but in a lot of times, especially with something like this, that's actually very organic, the circles don't actually fit within the design. And I think some people have just tried to kind of manufacture them into it to make it look cleaner, but actually the way these curves work, they don't actually fit with a perfect circle. So I'm not going to be using anything like that. It's purely going to be the pen tool. But yeah, so back to what I was saying is, although this area here is curving, I want to think about where I'm going to be dragging those Bezier handles to, and I want them to basically roughly match the angle at which that anchor point, it's meeting the anchor point at the top here. So hopefully this will make more sense when I actually do it. So I'm just roughly dragging that out to match the angle at the top there. Let's just click off and do the same on the other side. I'll just drag this one right down. It doesn't matter that these are overlapping and it's all looking a bit messy right now, because it'll all get tidied up afterwards. Last thing I'm going to do actually is just plot a line just on the leftmost point of this curve. So if anyone's seen our video on using the pen tool, we talk about this a lot, trying to find the extremities of curves. So either the rightmost, topmost, leftmost or bottommost points of a curve, and that's always normally a good place to plot your anchor points. So that's what I'm doing here, and I would say our guides are pretty much set for this. So this may seem a little bit over the top, but it really does make a big difference when it comes to actually tracing it with few anchor points, and it makes your life a lot easier. I've seen a few people trying to recreate this just with a few anchor points and then trying to sort of shimmy the curves in place with the anchor point tool, and it just doesn't really work. So it's better to be precise using grids like this. So I've locked my guides layer, I'm up on my design layer now, and I'm going to grab my pen tool. So what I'll do is let's actually bump in fact, yeah, I'll go up to 0.5, so it's only slightly bigger, but hopefully we'll still get a good idea of how accurate we're being. I'll change the stroke color to a bright blue cyan as well, just so it stands out from the guides. And I'll just start in this top corner. So let's zoom in a bit so you can see. And quite simply, obviously with this first one, I'm just following this first angled line down, nice and easy. And the beauty of this now, if I click and drag, my smart guides are actually going to snap to the angle of that line. So I can be sure that everything before that anchor point is still a perfectly straight line, which is obviously very important for something like this. When we want something to be that precise, we don't want any curvature in the design at all. In that part of the design, I should say, sorry. So we'll go with that. We'll maybe actually go where it intersects here. Sometimes one of those that there's a bit of trial and error involved. So what I didn't do here, so you'll see we've got the line coming down to create the sort of left edge of this part of the curve. I didn't actually mark out the bottom point of the curve down at the bottom here, so I'm just going to have to kind of guess that one. I could have put another line in there to help with that, but I think this is fine. Let's just go with something like that. And again, when you're using something like the pen tool in this kind of environment, there's a lot of just trying things out, going back and correcting them and just playing about with it until it's flowing properly. So like I say, check out our pen tool video. So that's techniques for using the pen tool, that if you're not already kind of familiar with it or not comfortable with it, that should really help you out. I'm basically using a lot of the techniques we use in that video in this one. So what I'm going to try and do here is just click once at the top here, and I wonder if I can just adjust this Bezier handle to match that curve. I think we might just get away with that. So yeah, let's go with that. And I can already see that this is creating a much smoother curve as well compared to my freehand version. It's already a lot cleaner and obviously a lot easier to do accurately. So now I'm going down to where we have this line and just roughly try to find that middle point. I'm just going to click and drag down the way, match the first part of the curve there. Nice one. And now we're going to go back to our other projecting line to bring this back to the start. So again, I'm just going to roughly plot this. This again might need adjusted as we go. I'm just clicking and dragging, again using my smart guides to snap it to that angle, which is what we want. We wouldn't be able to do that otherwise if we didn't have the guides. And then this may just need a tiny bit of adjustment on this side. So always a wee bit involved with the curve handles just to get them, you know, super accurate, but I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's going to yield a pretty solid result, and I can go back to the start, click on that first anchor point to close the shape. Obviously, because we locked our guides layer as well, we're not interfering with any of these guidelines in any way. So I can actually turn that layer off. Let's turn off our reference image layer as well, so you'll barely be able to see this. I'm going to flip the color. Let's just make it black so it stands out. And I'd say that's a hell of a lot better than what I created initially. I'm sure you'll probably agree. Let's just match them so they're both black. Yeah, I would say that's probably a good bit better. And if I turn on my reference image again, you know, side by side there, you're going to be hard pushed to find a big difference, I would say. So that's how I would go about recreating something like the Nike logo. Definitely give this a try if you haven't already. Give the template download a click. It's in the chat. It's also in the description, so you can go and take a look. And yeah, give this a go yourself. Like I say though, definitely try it without any kind of reference in front of you and without tracing it first, to do a sort of before and after like I've done here. So, I mean, I've been using the pen tool for years and it's not helped in this situation, because if you don't have some kind of reference to even just look at, you know, I think even if I'd done this with our reference image in front of me, it would have been a lot easier, but doing it with nothing and just try to go from memory, it's really quite tricky, but it's also quite a fun exercise. So definitely try it out. But yeah, I think that will do it for this one. If anyone's got any questions, like I say, please do let me know. Just checking in with the chat. Good to see Ross tuning in. We've got Ali saying great live tutorial. That's really good to hear, Ali. Like I say, we're going to definitely do some more of these style of live tutorials where we'll maybe take another famous logo. I'm already thinking of the Apple logo, for example. That's going to be a really interesting one to do and take a look at. So let me know if you enjoy this kind of content. It's always good to get feedback from you guys. Dominic also tuning in as well. Hi Dom, how you doing? So yeah, I think that will do it for this one. Like I say, if you want to check out our free logo design workshop, I've linked it in the chat. It's also in the description below. Like I say, it's a really in-depth workshop where we go through our full logo design process. So if you want to take your logos to a more professional and consistent level, that's the other thing that we really preach with the process, is that it leads to consistent results because you're doing the same tried and tested process every time. And yeah, we've used it for years with huge success. There's also 3 big bonuses within it. I'm not going to tell you exactly what they are, but I will say that one of them is a design file full of pre-made logos that you can use and customize yourself, and it'll save you a ton of time. So check that out. Link is in the description, and hopefully that is some use to you. If you want to check out the rest of the videos on our channel, obviously do that. Like I say, the pen tool video in particular, if you enjoyed what we were looking at here, it's got some really useful tips in there to get better at using the pen tool. But other than that, that's it for this one, guys. I will see you next time. All right, bye.